The chamber was tense, the air thick with anticipation as the committee hearing dragged on. Members shifted in their seats. Staffers whispered hurried notes. Cameras zoomed in for every possible angle. Then, out of nowhere, Jasmine Crockett leaned forward and cut through the noise with a voice that carried like thunder. "Senator Vance, you want to lecture me about integrity? You can't even tell the truth about your own record." The room froze. For a split second, there was silence. The kind of silence that comes when everyone realizes they have just witnessed a turning point. JD Vance blinked, caught off guard, his mouth half open as if searching for the words to fight back. But Crockett did not wait. She pressed forward, her tone sharper, every syllable echoing off the walls. "You came into this chamber on a wave of money and empty promises. And now you dare to stand here pretending to be the guardian of honesty? Sit down!" Gasps rippled across the hall. A staffer dropped a pen. The press gallery erupted in whispers, reporters already drafting the headline. What had just been another grinding session of Congress had suddenly transformed into a national spectacle. Jasmine Crockett had lit the fuse, and the explosion was only beginning. JD Vance had entered the chamber that morning with the confidence of a man certain the spotlight belonged to him. Backed by conservative allies, he sharpened his talking points, ready to portray Jasmine Crockett as reckless, unqualified, and out of touch. He smirked through his opening remarks, throwing barbed jabs that drew nods from his side of the aisle. "This country can't afford grandstanding from people who treat Congress like a stage," he sneered, aiming the words directly at Crockett. Cameras zoomed in on her face, expecting restraint, maybe a polite rebuttal. But Crockett had been underestimated before, and she had no intention of letting Vance control the narrative. Behind her, a few colleagues shifted uneasily, knowing exactly how sharp her tongue could be when cornered. Reporters were already tweeting, setting the stage for a fiery exchange that would ripple far beyond the walls of the Capitol. Allies of Vance whispered encouragement, certain he was about to score an easy victory, while Crockett's supporters leaned forward, sensing something different was about to unfold. The clash was bigger than two lawmakers trading insults. It was a collision of worlds. Vance, the polished figure elevated by party machinery and billionaire donors, against Crockett, the outspoken representative who built her reputation by refusing to be silenced. What began as a hearing over policy had turned into something else entirely. A showdown watched live across the country, with millions waiting to see who would flinch first. JD Vance leaned back in his chair, forcing a laugh that dripped with condescension. "Congresswoman, the problem with you is that you confuse noise with substance. You think shouting makes you right." His allies chuckled, pounding the table in shallow approval. But Jasmine Crockett didn't blink. She leaned closer to the microphone, her eyes locked on Vance like a target she had been waiting to confront. "Noise? Let me remind you, Senator, that it wasn't me who built a career on selling books about a life you abandoned the second power came knocking. You parade around talking about the working class, but when it came time to choose, you sided with billionaires and special interests." The words hit like a hammer. The hearing room stirred with sudden energy, murmurs rising in the corners. Vance adjusted his tie, his face reddening as he attempted to retake control. "That's a cheap shot," he snapped, his voice rising, but Crockett cut in before he could finish. "Cheap shots? The only thing cheap here is the way you sell yourself as a man of the people while voting against the very policies that would help them put food on the table. Don't talk to me about substance. You've been empty from the start." Gasps spread across the chamber. Reporters typed furiously, hands flying over keyboards. A few members covered their mouths, stunned at how openly Crockett had pierced through Vance's carefully polished armor. Still, Vance wasn't done. He raised his voice, almost shouting, "This is Congress, not a circus, and I won't be lectured by someone who doesn't even respect the rules of this institution." Crockett's reply came sharp, fast, undeniable. "The only circus here is the one you've built with your hypocrisy. And if truth sounds too loud for you, Senator, maybe it's because you've spent too long hiding from it." The audience erupted, the sound of outrage mixing with applause. The fight was no longer about procedure or policy. It was about credibility, truth, and the kind of leadership America would accept. The tension kept rising, each word another strike, each pause another step closer to a breaking point. JD Vance slammed his hand on the desk, his voice booming. You sit here pretending to be some champion of justice, but the truth is you're nothing more than a headline chaser. You care more about applause on Twitter than solving real problems. His words echoed through the chamber, meant to humiliate, meant to silence. For a moment, it seemed like the balance might tip back in his favor. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She leaned into her microphone, her tone calm but lethal, the kind of voice that slices deeper than shouting ever could. Senator Vance, you talk about chasing headlines? Let me remind you that your entire career is a headline written by billionaires who bought your courage and left you empty. You accuse me of seeking attention, but you built your name begging for it. The difference is, when I speak, people see the truth. When you speak, all they see is a man who sold his soul for a Senate seat. The chamber erupted. Gasps, murmurs, scattered applause that quickly swelled into a wave. The moment was electric, raw, undeniable. Vance sat frozen, blinking rapidly, his lips moving, but no words forming. Cameras zoomed in on his face, capturing the silence of a man stripped of defense. Crockett wasn't finished. She delivered the line that would echo across the nation, a line destined for headlines, memes, and late-night monologues. If honesty shook this chamber the way you shake with fear, maybe America would finally get the leadership it deserves. The room exploded. Even members who had stayed silent could not contain their reactions. Some cheered, others covered their faces in disbelief. The press gallery became a storm of flashing cameras and frantic typing. In that single clapback, Crockett had done what few ever managed. She had dismantled her opponent with words so sharp they left him stunned into silence. For JD Vance, it was humiliation broadcast live. For Jasmine Crockett, it was triumph, a clapback so brutal it sent shockwaves through the halls of Congress and beyond. The chamber did not return to normal after Jasmine Crockett's words. The energy was still buzzing, heavy, impossible to ignore. Some lawmakers tried to shuffle papers and pretend the moment hadn't happened, but the cameras told a different story. Every network cut the footage into instant loops. Every social media platform flooded with the clip. Within minutes, hashtags exploded. Hashtag Crockett clapback, #Vance shaken, #Congress on fire. Reporters outside the Capitol swarmed with questions, demanding responses from both sides. Allies of JD Vance scrambled, offering weak defenses, insisting he had been taken out of context. But their excuses only fueled the frenzy. Pundits replayed Crockett's lines again and again, each time with greater astonishment. Commentators who usually dismissed her now admitted she had delivered one of the sharpest takedowns in recent congressional memory. Inside Congress, whispers spread like wildfire. Some members approached Crockett quietly, thanking her for saying what they had long wanted to say but never dared. Others avoided her entirely, unwilling to risk becoming her next target. And Vance? He kept his head low, his silence speaking louder than any rebuttal. Beyond the chamber, America had already taken sides. Supporters of Crockett celebrated her fearlessness, calling her the voice the country needed, someone willing to torch hypocrisy without hesitation. Critics fumed, accusing her of disrespect, claiming the moment cheapened Congress, but even they could not deny the impact. Late-night hosts seized the clip, comedians weaving it into monologues, while memes painted Vance as a deer in headlights. By morning, headlines around the nation declared it the moment Congress would not forget. And as the dust settled, Crockett's final message lingered. That truth, spoken boldly, could shake the very foundations of power. For her supporters, it was proof that courage still had a place in Washington. For her opponents, it was a warning that underestimating Jasmine Crockett came at a cost. The clapback had not just silenced JD Vance, it had left an entire institution trembling and a country wide awake.